So it's roughly been around a year since I've done my top 5 best enlisted gold order weapons, and today we're going to be doing a new one because as of right now, the last video was extremely outdated, so today we're going to be doing another version. Of course, because of all things, this video is just going to be covering the gold order weapons as of right now in 2023, and hopefully most of these weapons stay until next year, because after that I think I'll have to do another video about the gold order weapons in 2024. But of course, all these suggestions and all these ideas / all these suggestions and the ones that you see, the gold order weapons, etc., have been made possible for the friends at the Discord, meaning if you haven't liked, subscribe, or joined the Discord, highly suggest that you do. But that said, let's get started. In the 5th place, we have the latest weapon ever added, and that is the Mondragon and Farquhar Hill. Now, both of these weapons are amazing, more so the Farquhar Hill, mostly because the Farquhar Hill is going to be firing faster, it has less ammo but more damage, and it has very decent, almost like a ray gun, so that's going to be very accurate and very devastating. The Mondragon, on the other hand, has 30 rounds, but it has slightly less damage and slightly more dispersion, which could be an issue for long range, but for both of these weapons, I highly suggest that you use them at close range, with the exception of the Farquhar Hill, which can be essentially used at long range for sniping. But because they both have no scope, I highly suggest that you just rush in and use these weapons like an assault rifle or a semi-automatic rifle with an extended magazine. Both of these weapons are extremely deadly, and both of these weapons are extremely good. But that said, let's move on to our 4th spot. And in this spot we have 2 weapons, and that is because both of these weapons are amazing. These are going to be the FN Model 30 and the WAR. The reason why these weapons are up is because for the Axis, the FN Model 30 is very good for essentially being a BAR, and the WAR is essentially the American version, or should I say the Winchester automatic rifle, that is based on the BAR but just better. So basically these are BARs, and if you really have to only spend 1 gold order, choose the FN Model 30, because that thing is essentially an Axis BAR, and as of right now, the Japanese, which really need this type of weapon, really needs a weapon like this so they can be used in the Pacific, because as of right now, the Pacific doesn't really have a lot of good machine guns, and what machine guns there are, most people have a hard time using, so the FN-30 is a good replacement. But besides that, both of these weapons are amazingly good, should I say. They're awesome. Both are essentially glorified BARs, and they do their job better than the regular BAR. But that said, let's move on to the 3rd spot. And once again, we have 2 weapons. We have the PPS-40 Suppressed, otherwise known as the PPD-40 Bramit. And of course, we have the other weapon, which is the PP Spectacularity. Both of these weapons are going to be extremely devastating, more so of the PPD-40 Bramit, because the PPD-40 Suppress is essentially a PPSH with a suppressor, and because of how Enlisted AI are doing right now, the suppressor can just instantly disqualify you from getting 360 no-scope or something on the lines of that from an AI. And this PPD-40, like I said, is already a PPSH, and if you guys haven't used the PPSH, this thing is practically insane. The PPD-40 Spectacularity, on the other hand, 1940 variant, is almost as good, but it doesn't have a suppressor, but it makes up for that with 91 rounds, or 97 rounds to be exact. And this weapon essentially fires slower, but on the other hand, the weapon can almost keep firing because it has a slow firing rate and has more rounds. So if you ask me in the end, which weapon do I prefer at the end of the day, I would rather prefer the PPD-40 Bramit, because that thing has a suppressor, and most of these things can instantly just kill people without the AI knowing you're there. But that said, that is the number 3 spot. Let's move on to the number 2 spot, and this time we have the Kunders and the LAD. Now both of these weapons are insane. They're practically insane. If you ever use the PPSH, like I said before, then you know how this one works. Both of these weapons, more so of the Kunders, with the exception of the fact that these weapons essentially both have 100 rounds. Now for the Germans, the Kunders is a very good weapon, very good. It can only be compatible with the STG-44, and the Kunders is very good in terms of using it almost like a machine gun. On the other hand, the LAD is almost very similar. And although both of these are assaulters, I treat them like full-blown machine guns for obvious reasons. Number 1 is that they fire so fast, and number 2, the damage that they fire so fast with is insane. And because of these weapons are so good, I highly suggest that you get it. Needless to say, both of these weapons are on this list because of the high damage, high rate of fire, and essentially cool. But that said, we do have some honorable mentions before we move on to the number 1 spot. These are going to be the Lanchester Model 1, not to be confused with the Lanchester with the 50 round magazine that we have as of right now in Enlisted for the event, and the SVD, yes, you heard me, the SVD, not the SVT 38. And the SVD 38 is essentially a modern Soviet, essentially sniper rifle with a modern scope, or at least a modern looking scope, with the bases on the SVT. The only difference is the SVD in this case is way better and is way deadlier and could essentially snipe, whereas the SVT does have a slightly harder time at sniping. But that said, those are my honorable mentions, and of course another one that I have is the VMP 1929, but that one has been shown previously on my other older top 5 gold order list, so I'm not going to be using it here, but that thing is still available, so I highly suggest that you can still get it. And finally, we are on our number 1 spot, and the answer is kind of obvious if you have watched to this point, and that is the MKB-42W. The Walter variant of the MKB-42 is very devastating. It is almost as fast firing as the H version, but somehow the Walter version fires faster, which means this thing is kind of on par with the STG-44, which, if you know that weapon, this weapon is insane. The sights are also a little bit wonky, but in my idea they're also cooler because you do have these wonderful looking shape of the gun itself, which is amazing. The Walter variant also does the exact same damage as the STG-44, the MKB-42, and other weapons. The only difference that I had when using this weapon was that I felt the fire rate wasn't good enough, and the other big issue was that I didn't have enough of these to win the war for the German side. But of course, the MKB-42W is an amazing weapon. Highly suggest that you use it. Highly suggest that you give almost essentially everyone, spend all your gold orders on this, because this is essentially Gewehr 43 Kurz without the 3-round burst, and if you see my Gewehr 43 Kurz video, you know how devastating that thing is. And yes, I'm going to be essentially comparing the Gewehr 43 Kurz with the MKB-42W, which kind of tells you how overpowered this thing is. But that's it. That's all for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one.